She spent $45,000 hiring a PI to catch me cheating. 3 months of surveillance, 2 investigators, and a secret plan to destroy me in court. But when the PI demanded an emergency meeting, he looked her dead in the eye and said, "Ma'am, I'm refunding everything. What I found, you don't want to know. My name is James Mitchell. I'm 44 years old, and for the past 18 years, I've been married to a woman I thought I knew. Rachel. Beautiful, sharp-tongued Rachel who could charm customers at our flagship store on Main Street, and then turn around and gut a supplier's quote like she was filleting a fish. We built this business together, or at least that's what I told myself. 2 daughters, Sarah, who's 17 and heading to college next year, and Lily, who just turned 14 and still believes her parents hung the moon. The coffee shop where it all came apart was called Brewster's, one of those places with exposed brick and overpriced lattes. I sat in the corner booth, hands wrapped around a cup I hadn't touched, watching the door. Rachel sat across from me, legs crossed, picking at her manicured nails. She'd been smug all morning, kept checking her phone like she was waiting for Christmas. "He should be here any minute," she said, not looking at me. I didn't respond, just waited. When Lawrence Hayes walked through that door, I knew immediately something had shifted. He wasn't the confident investigator who'd taken Rachel's money 3 months ago. His shoulders were tight, his face pale, and he carried his leather briefcase like it weighed 50 pounds. He spotted us, hesitated for just a moment, then walked over like a man heading to his own execution. He didn't sit down right away, just stood there, briefcase in hand, staring at Rachel. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low and careful, "I'm refunding your full deposit. All $45,000. Rachel blinked. "What?" "I'm deleting everything I found. Every photo, every report, every note." She laughed, but came out wrong, brittle. "Is this some kind of joke? I paid you to follow him for 3 months. Hayes set the briefcase on the table, but didn't open it. His eyes stayed on Rachel. "And I did my job, but I'm not keeping your money." "Why not?" Her voice had an edge now, sharp enough to cut. He glanced at me for the first time, and I saw something in his expression. Not pity. Recognition, maybe, like he'd just figured out which one of us was the hunter and which was the prey. "Because, ma'am," he said quietly, "what I found, you don't want to know. Trust me." The silence that followed felt like standing in a vacuum. Rachel's face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, anger, fear, all flickering like a broken light bulb. "That's not an answer," she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. Hayes picked up his briefcase. "I'll wire the refund today. This case is closed." Rachel grabbed his wrist. "You found something. Tell me. Who is she? Where does he go?" Hayes looked at her hand on his wrist like it was a snake. Then he pulled free, gentle but firm. "This isn't about him, Mrs. Mitchell." And then he walked out. I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold, but I barely noticed. Rachel was staring at the door like Hayes might come back and explain it was all a misunderstanding. But he wasn't coming back. Men like Lawrence Hayes don't run from a job unless they've seen something that scares them more than losing $45,000. "What did you do?" Rachel whispered, finally looking at me. I set down my cup. "Me? I went to work. Came home. Fixed the broken fence. Helped Lily with her math homework. Same thing I've done for 18 years. Then why would he?" "Maybe," I said, my voice calm and even, "you should be asking what you did." Her face went pale. Not the kind of pale you get from surprise. The kind you get when you realize you've been standing on thin ice and you just heard it start to splinter beneath your feet. 3 months before that meeting at Brewster's, things looked different. Or maybe they just looked normal because I wasn't paying attention to the right details. It started small. Rachel began watching me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I'd come home from a North Side store after dealing with a supplier dispute, and she'd be standing in the kitchen, arms crossed, staring at me like I just walked in wearing someone else's face. "Long day," she'd ask. "Inventory issues," I'd say, heading to the fridge for a beer. "Your shirt's untucked." I'd look down. It was because I'd been moving boxes for 2 hours. Been working, Ratch. That's what happens. But she'd keep staring, like she was waiting for me to slip up and confess to something I hadn't done. Then came the questions about the truck. Every single day. How many miles today? Or where exactly did you go after the Main Street store? I'd answer honestly because I had nothing to hide, but honest answers weren't what she wanted. She wanted inconsistencies, gaps, proof of something that didn't exist. I found a first clue. She was up to something on Tuesday. I needed registration papers from her car for the insurance. Popped open the glove box, and there it was. A business card wedged between a protein bar and some old receipts. Lawrence Hayes, Private Investigations. Discreet. Reliable. Results. I stood there in our driveway, holding that card, and something clicked into place. The questions. The watching. The way she started checking my phone when she thought I was asleep, not knowing I'd wake up and see her face lit blue in the dark. I didn't confront her. That's not how you handle someone who's already convinced you're guilty. Instead, I put the car back exactly where I found it and started paying attention. 2 weeks later, I spotted the tail. White sedan, always 3 cars back, always taking the same turns I did. The driver wore a baseball cap, and sunglasses like that made him invisible. Amateur hour. I led him on the most boring routes imaginable. Hardware store to bank. Bank to supply depot. Supply depot home. Same routine, day after day. I called the number on that business card from a burner phone I picked up at one of my stores. Hayes answered on the second ring. I know you're following me, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Silence on the other end. Then who is this? The guy in the truck you've been tailing for 2 weeks. James Mitchell. More silence. Then a long exhale. Mr. Mitchell, I'm just doing my job. I know, and I'm not going to stop you. But I want you to understand something. I paused, watching Rachel through the kitchen window, as she paced with her phone pressed to her ear. Whatever you find, keep detailed records. Every single thing. Because when this is done, someone's going to need them. Sir, I don't. You will, I said, and hung up. That night, Rachel came to bed smiling. She curled up against me, ran her fingers through my hair like she used to when we first got married. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, I said, and meant it. But I also knew she was lying, and I was done pretending I didn't notice. The thing about running 3 hardware stores is you meet people. Contractors, electricians, plumbers, guys who know guys. One of those guys was Derek Finch, a retired cop who now did security consulting. We'd grab breakfast sometimes at the diner on 4th Street, talk business, swap stories about difficult customers. 2 weeks after I found Hayes following me, I met Derek at our usual booth. He slid into the seat across from me, already working on his 3rd coffee of the morning. You look like something's eating at you, Derek said, dumping sugar into his cup. Got a hypothetical for you, I said. Say someone hires a PI to follow you. What's the smartest play? Derek's eyebrows went up. Rachel. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. He leaned back, studying me. Hypothetically, you could confront them. Make a scene. That's what most people do. He paused. Or you could let them dig. See where the shovel hits. And if they're digging in the wrong yard, then they'll figure that out eventually. But here's the thing, Jimmy. People who hire investigators aren't usually wrong about something being off. They're just wrong about what it is. That stuck with me. I paid for breakfast and drove to the Main Street store, where Sarah was helping stock shelves during her summer break before senior year started. She looked up when I walked in, pushing her hair back with hands covered in inventory dust. Dad, we're running low on the 1/4-inch drill bits again, she said. I'll call the supplier. I paused by the register. Your mom seems stressed lately. She say anything to you? Sarah's expression shifted, just slightly, the way it does when a 17-year-old knows something they're not sure they should share. She asks about you a lot. What kind of asks? Like, where you go after work. If you mention any names. Whether you seem happy. She set down the box she was holding. Dad, is everything okay? I could have lied. Could have said everything was fine. But Sarah was smart, observant. She'd figure out eventually anyway. Your mother's going through something, I said carefully. And I'm trying to give her space to work through it. But yeah, everything's okay. I promise. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and went back to stocking shelves. That afternoon, I was in my office at the warehouse when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Mr. Mitchell, this is Lawrence Hayes. I leaned back in my chair. What can I do for you? I wanted to let you know. Someone else is following me. Professional, not like my usual work. They're watching me watch you. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. My wife hired a second investigator. That would be my guess. She doesn't trust that I'm being honest with her. He paused. And she's right now to trust me. I've been in contact with someone who knows you. Derek Finch. Derek called you? Other way around. I called him after you called me. Wanted to know what kind of man I was dealing with. He vouched for you. Said you were solid. I processed this. Hayes was building insurance, making sure he had cover when this whole thing came apart. Smart. The second investigator, I said. You get a name? Not yet, but I'll find out. And Mr. Mitchell? Whatever your wife thinks she's going to find, she's looking in the wrong direction. You might want to start looking in hers. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in my office, surrounded by inventory spreadsheets and supplier invoices, and realized the game had just gotten more complicated. Rachel wasn't just suspicious. She was paranoid, and paranoid people made mistakes. I just had to wait for her to make hers. The second investigator made contact 2 days later. Not with me directly, but through a message left with my assistant at the Northside store. Client wants to meet. Regarding mutual interests. Cafe Roma, 2 p.m. Thursday. I showed up 15 minutes early, took a corner table with a view of the door, and waited. At exactly 2 p.m., a woman walked in. Mid-40s, professional attire, carrying a slim leather portfolio. She scanned the room, spotted me, and walked over. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Catherine Price. She sat down without waiting for an invitation. I believe we're both investigating the same situation from different angles. You're the one following Hayes. I'm the one your wife hired when she decided she couldn't trust her first investigator. Catherine pulled out a tablet from her portfolio. She's paying me $20,000 for 2 weeks of verification work, making sure Hayes isn't covering for you or taking bribes. And what have you found? That Lawrence Hayes is either the worst PI in Colorado, or he's telling the truth. You're the most boring subject I've ever surveilled. Work, home, hardware stores, one poker night with the guys at Derek Finch's house. She paused. Your wife, on the other hand, is significantly more interesting. I felt my pulse quicken, but kept my voice level. How so? Catherine turned the tablet toward me. On the screen was a photo of Rachel standing outside a wine bar downtown. She wasn't alone. A man in an expensive suit had his hand on her lower back, leaning in close to say something that made her laugh. His name is Philip Stanton, Catherine said. Commercial real estate developer. Married. 2 kids. And according to phone records I shouldn't have been able to access but did anyway, he's been in contact with your wife at least 3 times a week for the past 8 months. I stared at the photo. Rachel was wearing the blue dress she'd bought for our anniversary last year. The one she said made her feel beautiful. She was wearing it for him. There's more, Catherine continued, swiping to another image. Bank transfer records. Your wife opened an account under her sister's name. Laura Mitchell, correct? Yeah. $42,000 have been moved into that account over the past 6 months. Small transfers, $2,000 to $3,000 at a time, all from your business accounts. She looked at me. You sign off on those? No. My voice came out harder than I intended. I don't. Catherine closed the portfolio. Mr. Mitchell, I'm going to be direct. Your wife hired me to prove you're hiding something. But the only person hiding anything is her. And I think you already knew that. What are you going to tell her? Nothing. Yet. She stood. I'm going to finish my 2 weeks, compile a complete report, and then I'm going to hand it to both of you at the same time. Let her explain it in front of witnesses. She picked up her portfolio. Unless you want to handle this differently. I thought about that. About 18 years of marriage. About Sarah and Lily. About every morning I'd made coffee, and every night I'd come home to a woman who was stealing from me while accusing me of betrayal. No, I said. Do it your way. Documentation matters. Catherine nodded. One more thing. Philip Stanton? He's not just some random affair. He's trying to buy commercial property near your Main Street store. He's been talking to your wife about purchasing it. Your store, Mr. Mitchell. She's planning to sell it out from under you. After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at my cold coffee. Rachel wasn't just cheating. She was systematically dismantling everything we'd built, and she was doing it while making me look like the villain. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd assumed I wouldn't fight back. And now I had 2 investigators working for me, whether she knew it or not. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Catherine Price called me on a Monday morning while I was at the warehouse reviewing quarterly taxes. Her voice was level, professional, but I could hear something underneath it. Anger, maybe. Or disgust. Mr. Mitchell, I need you to come to an address in Riverside. Apartment 412. Don't tell your wife where you're going. What's there? Something you need to see in person. I drove across town to a modern complex near the river, all glass and steel, and luxury pricing. Catherine was waiting in a lobby, holding a key card. "The landlord is a client of mine," she explained as we rode the elevator. When I showed him Rachel's photo, he confirmed she's been renting this unit for 2 years. Pays cash. Uses her maiden name. Bennett. Rachel Bennett. 2 years. 2 years. The apartment door opened to a space that looked nothing like our home. Modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, a wine rack stocked with expensive bottles. No family photos. No evidence that Rachel had children or a husband. It was like walking into a stranger's life. "She's here twice a week," Catherine said, watching me take it in. "Tuesday afternoons and Thursday evenings. Stanton meets her here. But there's more." She led me to the bedroom. On the nightstand was a framed photo, Rachel and Stanton on a beach somewhere tropical. She was wearing a ring I'd never seen. In the closet, clothes I didn't recognize. Designer labels. Nothing she'd ever worn at home. "Look at this," Catherine said, pointing to a calendar on the small desk. Rachel's handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. Dates marked with hearts. Appointments labeled P for Philip, I assumed. And in the margin of next month, written in red ink, "Tell James." Finally be free. I stood there holding that calendar, and something in me went very cold and very clear. This wasn't just an affair. This was a complete alternate life. Rachel had been living as two different people, and the version married to me was the one she was planning to discard. The landlord said she asked about breaking the lease early. Catherine continued. Said she might be moving to Arizona. Stanton's company just opened an office in Scottsdale. She's planning to leave. More than that, she's planning to take enough money from you to start fresh with him. The stolen funds, the store sale, probably half of everything else in divorce court. She's been building an exit strategy for 2 years, James. This apartment is proof of premeditation. I walked through each room, documenting everything with my phone. Photos of the calendar, the clothes, the wine rack with bottles that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Evidence of a life funded by my work while I thought we were building something together. What do you want to do with this information? Catherine asked. How much do I owe you for the 2 weeks? 20,000. I'll double it. I want everything. Every photo, every receipt, every record of when she's been here. I want a complete timeline. And I want you to find out everything about Philip Stanton. Business dealings, marriage status, financial situation. Everything. Catherine nodded. And your wife? She's going to ask me for my report soon. Tell her you're still gathering information. String her along another week. I need time to get my pieces in place. After Catherine left, I sat alone in Rachel's secret apartment, in this life she'd built without me, and made a list. Not of what I'd lost, but of what I was going to protect. My daughters, my business, my reputation, everything she thought she could take. I was in a lockdown so tight she needed a blowtorch to get through. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten who taught her how to run a business in the first place. I've been building and protecting things since before I met her, and I sure as hell wasn't going to stop now. I locked the apartment behind me and drove back to the warehouse. Time to make some calls, starting with my lawyer, then my accountant, then my bank. Rachel thought she had this all figured out. She was about to learn she'd miscalculated badly. My grandmother died when I was 23, left me a collection of antiques she'd spent her whole life gathering. Depression-era furniture, vintage clocks, a set of china from the 1800s that she swore came over from England with her great-grandmother. When Rachel and I got married, those pieces went into our home. She always said they gave the place character. Turns out she meant they gave her spending money. I discovered it by accident, scrolling through an estate sale website looking for tools for the store. There, in the recently sold section, was my grandmother's Victorian writing desk. The listing was from 3 months ago. Sold for $8,000 to a buyer in California. I sat frozen, staring at the screen. That desk had been in our living room for 15 years. I'd assumed Rachel moved it to storage when she redecorated last spring. She said it didn't fit the new aesthetic. I called the auction house. The woman who answered was helpful. Pulled up the consignment records. Yes, we handle that piece. Beautiful condition. The seller was a Ms. Rachel Bennett. Would you like information about similar items? Did she sell anything else? Let me check. Yes, quite a bit actually. Over the past year, she's consigned 14 pieces total. All high-quality antiques. Total sales came to just over $180,000. I felt like I'd been hit in the chest. Can you send me a complete list? I'll need authorization from the seller. I'm her husband. Those were family heirlooms. My family. There was a pause. Sir, I'll need to verify that with Ms. Bennett before I can release any information. Don't bother, I said, and hung up. I walked through her house room by room, taking inventory. The grandfather clock that had been my great-uncle's. Gone. The oak buffet from my grandmother's dining room. Gone. The collection of vintage tools my grandfather had used to build furniture. Gone. Everything that connected me to my family history had been systematically stripped away and sold. And Rachel had done it while I was at work, while I was busy keeping our business afloat so she could live in comfort. She'd erased my past to fund her future with someone else. I called Catherine Price. I needed to track down every piece Rachel sold. I want the buyer's information, sale prices, dates, everything. Some of those buyers might not want to give the items back. I'll pay double what they paid. Triple if I have to. Those pieces aren't just worth money. They're my family's history. She had no right. I'll start on it today. I sat in what used to be our living room, surrounded by Rachel's new furniture, her new decorations, everything she'd chosen to replace what she'd stolen. And I thought about my grandmother, how she'd carefully preserved each piece, how she'd told me stories about where they came from, who owned them, what they meant. Rachel had taken those stories and turned them into cash. And she'd done it with a smile on her face, kissing me goodbye each morning like she wasn't systematically destroying everything I came from. That night, when she got home from shopping with friends, I was sitting in the kitchen waiting. She breezed in, carrying bags from stores I knew she hadn't been to. Hey, hon, sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. She set the bags down, started unpacking groceries. How was your day? Productive, I said. Found something interesting online. An estate sale website. Her hand slowed, just for a second. Oh yeah? Find anything good? Actually, I found something that used to be mine. Victorian writing desk. Sold 3 months ago for $8,000. She turned, her face carefully neutral. That's nice. It was my grandmother's desk, Rachel. The one that was in our living room. Oh. She went back to unpacking groceries. I'm going to tell you about that. It needed repairs and the guy I took it to said it would cost more to fix than it was worth. So I sold it. Figure we could use the money. Funny thing is, the auction house said it was in beautiful condition. And they said you sold 13 other pieces too. All mine. All from my family. Her hand stopped completely this time. James. $180,000, Rachel. That's what my family's history was worth to you. Did it feel good? Selling off pieces of my past to fund whatever you've been planning. She turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. You're twisting this. No, I said, standing. I'm just finally seeing it clearly, and we're going to have a conversation about where that money went. All of it. Tonight. Rachel's attorney called my office on a Tuesday. My secretary put him through without warning, probably because she didn't recognize the threat in a polite voice asking for Mr. Mitchell. James, this is David Thornton. I represent your wife in a confidential matter. She's asked me to reach out regarding a potential amicable separation. I leaned back in my chair, watching traffic through my window. Amicable. That's an interesting word choice. We'd like to avoid court if possible. Keep things private, dignified. I understand you have a prenuptial agreement. We do. Rachel would like to discuss terms for dissolving the marriage. She's prepared to be reasonable about asset division if you're willing to cooperate. How reasonable? She's asking for the house, half the value of the business, and primary custody of both daughters with reasonable visitation for you. I almost laughed. That's what she calls reasonable. Mr. Mitchell, I think you'll find that fighting this in court will be far more expensive and damaging than settling now. Discovery can be very unpleasant for everyone involved. Discovery, I repeated. You mean the part where we exchange evidence and documents? Where everything gets put on the record? Exactly. Which is why an amicable settlement. Tell Rachel I'll see her in court, I said, and hung up. 2 hours later, I was sitting across from my own attorney, Paul Henderson, a man who'd handled business contracts for me for 10 years. Paul was 60, gray-haired, and had a reputation for being methodical and ruthless in equal measure. They're testing you, Paul said after I explained the call, seeing if you'll panic and settle before things get ugly. Things are already ugly. They're about to get uglier. We need to file first, James. Control the narrative. And we need to include everything you found. The affair, the stolen money, the fake identity with the apartment, the sale of your family heirlooms. All of it. What about the prenup? Paul pulled out his copy, the one we'd reviewed when Rachel and I first got married. He flipped to page 7, section D. This clause right here. It states that in the event of adultery, fraud, or financial malfeasance during the marriage, the prenuptial protections are void and all marital assets default to the non-offending party. I remember arguing about that clause. Rachel's lawyer insisted on it, said it protected both of us from bad behavior. She protected you and didn't realize it, because under this clause, she gets nothing. The house stays yours, the business stays yours. Even her separate accounts can be frozen pending investigation of the stolen funds. Paul looked up. James, if we play this right, Rachel walks away with exactly what she deserves. Nothing. And the girls. Sarah's 17, old enough to choose who she lives with. Lily's 14, so the court will consider her wishes but not guarantee them. With the evidence of Rachel's affair and her stealing from the family, you'll have strong grounds for primary custody. I sat there processing it. 18 years of marriage, ending not with a whimper, but with a legal nuclear strike. What do we do first? We file tomorrow. Divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. We'll attach preliminary evidence, enough to show we're serious, but not everything. Let her lawyer think they can still negotiate. Paul opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Then we serve her. Publicly if possible. Publicly. At her apartment in Riverside. Make sure she understands we know everything. Shock and awe, James. We hit her so hard, she doesn't have time to hide more assets or create more lies. I thought about Rachel, probably at that apartment right now, planning her new life with Stanton, confident she had everything under control. She had no idea the trap was already closing. Do it, I said. File everything. There's one more thing. Paul slid a document across the desk. We should include a request for a forensic accounting of all business finances for the past 5 years. If she's stolen $180,000, there might be more we haven't found. How much could she have taken? We won't know until we audit everything. But James, be prepared. People who steal once usually steal multiple times. The number could be significantly higher. I signed the papers Paul put in front of me, each signature feeling like closing a door that would never open again. Tomorrow, Rachel will be served with divorce papers. And the day after that, her whole carefully constructed plan would start falling apart. She wanted to play games with investigators and secret apartments and stolen heirlooms. Fine. But she'd forgotten I spent 20 years building businesses from nothing. And I knew how to tear things down just as efficiently. The papers were served at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. I know because Catherine Price called me the moment it happened. The process server just left Rachel's apartment. She's been served. And James, she did not take it well. Define not well. She threw the papers at him and slammed the door. Then she called someone, probably Stanton, and I could hear her screaming through the walls. Something about you ruining everything. Good. She left the apartment 20 minutes ago. Driving fast, erratic. I'm following her, but I think she's heading to your house. I was already in my truck, pulling out of the hardware store parking lot. I'll meet her there. I beat her home by 5 minutes. Long enough to call Sarah and tell her to take Lily to her friend's house and stay there until I called. Sarah heard something in my voice because she didn't argue, just grabbed her sister and left. Rachel's car screamed into the driveway 10 minutes later. She burst through the front door like a hurricane, papers clutched in her hand, face red and streaked with tears. How dare you? She threw the divorce papers at me. They scattered across the floor. You had me served at the apartment? You've been following me. You hired 2 investigators to follow me, I said calmly. Seems only fair. This is insane. Adultery? Fraud? You're trying to destroy me. No, Rachel. I'm trying to protect what's mine. There's a difference. She paced back and forth, hands shaking. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through whatever's going on. You don't have to do this. You sold my grandmother's belongings. $180,000 worth of my family history. You stole money from our business accounts. You've been living in a secret apartment for 2 years. I picked up one of the papers she'd thrown. And you've been planning to leave me for Philip Stanton. So no, Rachel, we can't fix this. That apartment, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. I've been inside. I've seen the photos, the calendar, the plans. I know everything. Her face went pale. You broke into my apartment. The landlord let me in. Turns out when you explain that your wife is hiding assets and planning to flee the state, people become cooperative. Rachel sat down hard on the couch, like her legs had given out. What do you want? I want you out of this house by Friday. I want every penny you stole returned. And I want primary custody of both girls. You can't take my daughters. I'm not taking them. You lost them when you decided Philip Stanton was more important than your family. I walked to the kitchen, came back with a bottle of water, set it on the table in front of her. Not kind, just practical. Paul's filing an emergency custody motion tomorrow morning. The evidence of your affair, the stolen money, the secret apartment, it all shows you're not stable. Judge will probably grant temporary custody to me pending a full hearing. James, please. I made mistakes, but they're my daughters. You can't do this. You did this. Every choice, every lie, every dollar you stole. This is the consequence. I headed toward the door. You have until Friday at noon to remove your personal belongings. Anything left after that gets donated. Where am I supposed to go? You have an apartment in Riverside. Or Philip's place. I don't care which. I paused at the door. And Rachel, tell your lawyer David Thornton that discovery works both ways. Because everything I found is about to become public record. Every photo from that apartment, every bank transfer, every heirloom you sold. All of it. I left her sitting there on our couch, surrounded by divorce papers, and drove to pick up my daughters. Sarah was waiting on her friend's porch, Lily beside her looking scared and confused. Dad, what's happening? Lily asked as they got in the truck. Your mom and I are getting divorced, sweetheart. And for a while, you're both going to stay with me. Because of what she did. Sarah asked quietly. Yeah, because of what she did. Lily started crying. Not loud, just quiet tears running down her face. Sarah put an arm around her sister and looked at me in the rearview mirror. We're going to be okay, right? We're going to be fine, I said, and meant it. Because Rachel had taken a lot from me. My trust, my grandmother's heirlooms, years of my life. But she hadn't taken what mattered most. My daughters still knew who their father was. And they were smart enough to figure out who their mother had become. The hearing was set for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday in late October. The courthouse smelled like old wood and nervous sweat, filled with people waiting for their turn in front of a judge who would decide their futures in 15-minute increments. Rachel arrived with David Thornton, her attorney, looking put together in a navy suit, but with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She didn't look at me as she took her seat across the aisle. Philip Stanton wasn't with her. Apparently, he decided to keep his distance once legal documents started flying. Judge Patricia Aldrich entered exactly at 9. She was 60, gray hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Paul had told me she had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense from anyone. We're here for Mitchell versus Mitchell, she said, settling into her chair. Dissolution of marriage, temporary custody arrangements, and emergency financial orders. Mr. Henderson, you filed. Start talking. Paul stood, organized as always. Your Honor, we're asking for immediate temporary custody of both minor children, a freeze on all joint accounts, and an order preventing the respondent from disposing of any marital assets. We have substantial evidence of adultery, financial fraud, and asset concealment. That's a serious accusation, Judge Aldrich said. I hope you can back it up. We can, Your Honor. Paul pulled out the first exhibit. Photos from Rachel's apartment. The calendar with Tell James. Finally be free, written in red ink. Bank statements showing transfers to accounts under her sister's name. Receipts from the auction house where she'd sold my grandmother's belongings. Thornton tried to object. Your Honor, this evidence was obtained without proper consent. The apartment was accessed without my client's knowledge. The landlord granted access. Paul interrupted. Mr. Mitchell had legitimate concerns about asset concealment. The landlord cooperated voluntarily. Judge Aldrich held up a hand. I'll review admissibility later. Right now I want to hear what you've got. Continue, Mr. Henderson. Paul laid it out systematically. The affair with Philip Stanton spanning 8 months. The secret apartment rented under her maiden name for 2 years. $42,000 stolen from business accounts. $180,000 in family heirlooms sold without my knowledge or consent. Plans to sell the Main Street store to Stanton's development company and flee to Arizona. Rachel's face got paler with each revelation. Thornton kept trying to interrupt, but Judge Aldrich shut him down every time. Your Honor, Thornton finally managed. My client made some poor choices, but this is vindictive. Mr. Mitchell is trying to destroy her out of spite. Spite. Paul's voice went cold. Your client stole from her husband, maintained a secret life for 2 years, and planned to leave the state with marital assets. That's not poor choices. That's calculated fraud. Judge Aldrich looked at Rachel. Mrs. Mitchell, do you have a response to any of this? Rachel stood slowly. Her voice was quiet, almost defeated. I made mistakes. The affair, the apartment, I take responsibility. But those heirlooms, James never cared about them. They were just sitting in storage. And the money I took, I was planning to pay it back once the divorce was settled. You were going to pay back money you stole after you'd already left the state? Judge Aldrich's tone could have frozen water. It's complicated. It's really not. Judge Aldrich flipped through the evidence. Mr. Henderson, you mentioned the prenuptial agreement has a clause regarding fraud? Section D, Your Honor. In the event of adultery or financial malfeasance, all prenuptial protections are voided in favor of the non-offending spouse. So Mrs. Mitchell gets nothing. That's correct, Your Honor. Judge Aldrich looked at Rachel again. You signed a prenup that specifically punished you for the exact behavior you engaged in. That's either remarkably stupid or remarkably arrogant. Thornton tried one more time. Your Honor, my client is willing to return the funds, work out a settlement. I'm granting temporary full custody to Mr. Mitchell. Judge Aldrich interrupted. Mrs. Mitchell will have supervised visitation pending a full custody evaluation. All joint accounts are frozen. Mrs. Mitchell is ordered to provide a full accounting of all funds transferred or spent for marital accounts. She is prohibited from selling, transferring, or disposing of any marital property. And given the evidence of asset concealment, I'm ordering a forensic audit of all finances for the past 5 years. She looked at Rachel. Mrs. Mitchell, you have 30 days to vacate the marital home. Any questions? Rachel just stood there, silent. Good. Next case. We walked out of the courthouse in a cold October air. Paul shook my hand. That went about as well as it could have. She didn't fight back, I said. I expected more of a fight. She knows she lost. The evidence was overwhelming. Now she's just trying to minimize damage. Paul adjusted his briefcase. James, the forensic audit is going to take time. Could be 6 months before we know the full extent of what she took. Are you prepared for that number to be higher than 180,000? Whatever it is, I'll deal with it. I just want this done. Sarah and Lily were waiting at my parents' house when I got there. Sarah looked up as I walked in. How'd it go? We got custody. You're both staying with me. Lily burst into tears, not sad ones, relieved ones. Sarah just nodded, like she'd known all along how it would turn out. That night, I stood in my hardware store after closing, walking through aisles I'd built over 20 years. Rachel had tried to take this from me, tried to sell it out from under me to fund a life I wasn't part of. But she'd failed. And now this store, this business, it was mine completely. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine Price. Forensic audit found something. Call me. I called. She answered immediately. James, the audit found more transfers. Rachel's been taking money for almost 3 years, not 6 months. Total is closer to $400,000. $400,000. I felt sick. Ow! Small amounts over time. 2,000 here, 3,000 there. She was careful, but not careful enough. The forensic accountant traced it all. Where to go? The apartment, the luxury purchases, cash payments to Stanton for some business deal that fell through. She was funding their future together with your money. I hung up and sat in my office, surrounded by inventory lists and customer orders, and thought about 3 years of my wife systematically robbing me blind. 3 years of smiles and kisses, and I love you, while she planned her escape. But she'd lost. She'd lost the house, the kids, any claim to the business. And now she owed me $400,000 she probably didn't have. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. The final divorce decree came through in June. Judge Aldrich hadn't changed her mind about anything from the temporary orders. I got the house, the business, full custody of both girls. Rachel got supervised visitation every other weekend and a court order to repay $417,000 at a rate of $2,000 per month for the next 17 years. She'd moved into a 1-bedroom apartment across town. Philip Stanton had dumped her the week after the custody hearing, Once he realized she came with legal problems and no money. Last I heard, she was working retail at a department store, trying to rebuild from nothing. Sarah graduated high school in May and got accepted to the state university on a partial scholarship. Lily started therapy to deal with everything that happened, and her therapist said she was doing well, considering. The hardware stores were thriving. Turns out, once I wasn't bleeding money to Rachel's secret accounts, I could actually invest in the business. We'd expanded the Northside location and were looking at opening a fourth store by next year. I stood in the Main Street store one Saturday morning, watching Sarah help a customer find the right drill bits, and Catherine Price walked in. I hadn't seen her since the trial ended. "James," she said, extending her hand. "Just want to check in. See how you're doing. Managing. You. Business is good. I actually got a referral from your attorney. Another cheating spouse case." She paused. "Look, I know this whole thing was hell. But you handled it right. Documented everything. Stayed calm. Let the evidence speak for itself. Didn't feel calm. No one ever does. But you protected your kids, your business, your future. A lot of people in your situation would have just folded, accepted a bad settlement, let themselves get destroyed. You didn't. That takes guts." After she left, I thought about that. Guts. Maybe. Or maybe just stubbornness. Refusal to let someone rewrite the story of my life, to make themselves the hero. That afternoon, Rachel came to pick up Lily for her supervised visit. The court-appointed supervisor waited in her car while Rachel came to the door. She looked older now, tired in a way that makeup couldn't fix. "Hey," she said quietly. "Lily will be right down," I said, not moving from the doorway. "James, I know I don't have the right to ask, but do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I looked at this woman I'd spent 18 years with, who I'd built a life with, who'd systematically destroyed everything while pretending to love me. "No," I said. "I don't think I will. But I don't hate you either. I just don't feel anything." She nodded, eyes wet. "That's worse than hate, isn't it?" "Yeah, it is." Lily came down, gave me a hug, and left with her mother. I watched them drive away, the supervisor's car following close behind like a shadow. Later that evening, I sat on the back porch with Sarah, both of us nursing cold beers in the summer heat. "You okay, Dad?" she asked. "Getting there. Good. Because you deserve to be happy. After everything, you really do." I looked at my daughter, 17 going on 30, wise beyond her years because she'd seen things no kid should have to see. "You know what? I think I'm happy. Maybe not the way I expected to be, but happy enough." "That's all anyone can ask for," Sarah said. And sitting there in the quiet, I realized she was right. Rachel had taken a lot from me. Money, time, trust. But she hadn't taken everything. I still had my daughters. I still had my business. I still had myself. And that, it turned out, was enough.